Hey, Brooks.
Hey there.
Hey, Brooks, Melissa Brooks. You guys know each other by now.
Sure do.
All right.
I'm Melissa.
How's it
Good.
going?
What's good today, guys? Thanks for being here.
Uh, yeah, thanks. This is just us two. Okay.
For the moment, we'll see who else shows up.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll get a couple more at least, if not a bunch more. We'll see. I really wanted to talk to you guys, like I said in the email today, about we're a month and 7 days away from the D date that hasn't moved yet. Like some of us thought might move, it hasn't moved yet. A lot of forms just came out, especially here in California. I understand they're dropping across the country between now and then. And a lot
Our
of
state meets
conversations,
next week.
okay, a lot more
To drop.
conversations seem to be coming up. I wanted to talk to whoever showed, like, where are you? How's your head? How's your conversation? And I have at least four scenarios I wanted to go over and do a little role play and how are you and how will you and how's that going to work for you? And whatever else comes up on the subject, if that's okay with you guys.
Yep.
So I have a question that was brought up day before yesterday in our sales meeting.
Okay.
Have you guys read that there's an appeal about this going on now?
Yeah, there's
Yeah, sort of.
sellers in South Dakota, North Dakota that didn't like the amount, it wasn't enough, and are appealing the settlement and wanting more money. That's what I know about it. I haven't done any more research with that one,
That's
Brooks.
kind of sort of what I know too.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of interesting. Which
So how are they getting more money, or what's the
well, this is the
justification for
United
that?
States. You can ask for whatever you want.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right? I imagine it works like California, the rest of the states. We're a litigious
Right.
country. If we want it, we're going to ask for it. If we don't like it, we'll stomp our feet until somebody listens. And that seems to be what's happening.
Do you
Yep.
think it's really going to happen though?
Mm.
I make no comments like that anymore. We now live in the upside down. I have no idea what's going to happen. What
Just
I know right now and what we can prepare for and what we need to be prepping for is the changes, how it affects us, knowing the documents, how it all affects our buyers, and most important, and buyers and sellers, our clients, the people that this matters to, and what the conversation is coming out of our mouths around it. So, with all of that said, lots of form changes. I think here in the state of California, it's in the 40s, between 40 and 50. I hope to God for both of you and anybody else listening, it's less than that for you. Know your forms, go to the training, go to the town halls. Is your brokerage doing something? Is your board doing something? Is the state doing something? Get involved in all of them so you're absolutely up to speed on anything you need to know about.
So I
So
think we're lucky here in the state of Wyoming because we've only got two forms that are getting changed. They introduced a form in regards of a customer relationship. So basically we do our brokerage disclosure form, and then now we have a customer form that says, by the way, you are not signing any agreement with us. This is just a customer basis right there. And then they changed on our contracts, our listing contract, or no, our purchase contracts is what they changed to where the seller reserves a certain portion of the sales price to cover the buyer's agent's fees, da 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 da. That's now in there. But on our listing fees, it's always been broke down. I charge 6%, but I break down. I keep 3.5%. We pay out 2.5% to a buyer's agent, 2.5% to an intermediary, and 2% to a customer relationship. So that way we're all covered in how it's going to be spent. And we've always had that discussion. So
Nice.
I think that's why Wyoming is probably the least documented state when it comes to contracts than any other. Years is ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, it did, Stu. No, I won't need all 40 of those on every transaction, right? There's the if this, then that type of disclosures. It's
Right.
something too. But yeah, our purchase, our buyer broker, our listing agreement, and yeah, all the good stuff that comes with it. But I don't want to get into my forms. I haven't even learned them all. They just dropped today. So We'll all
Oh, really? Just today they dropped.
Just today, they became live. We've had drafts of them. They went live today. I'm in a town hall with my state association tomorrow. I was with my broker yesterday, so I'm trying to learn as much, but it's all state specific and region specific, right? San Fran does things differently than we do, but we all have the same state forms, of course. Just know, and Brooks, we've talked about your support at the brokerage around things like this. Attend whatever they have, but you're going to need to lean on the local board and the state association probably for what you need to know about it. So make sure you're figuring that part out. And you guys, I'm saying that, excuse me, you're not even part of NAR. Are you, Brooks?
Yeah, we are.
You are part of NAR. Okay. Okay.
I just gotta take one phone call.
We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
No, yeah.
Just kidding. All right.
So in terms of ours, I just don't, I think it's going to be a little bit easier for me than most people, to be perfectly honest.
Good. Are you having
So,
many conversations around it right now at all?
No,
Okay.
honestly, when people list with me, they don't even question it.
Okay.
Because like I said, our contracts have always said, look, I'm going to take 6% of your sales price, and then I'm going to offer 2.5% of that out to a buyer's agent, an intermediary, or a customer representative.
Okay.
And that way, and that's part of what I did with like my seller's presentation packet, when I was reworking it after we came back.
Yeah.
Because people need to understand, even though I explain it that way, they need to understand still that I'm not keeping 6%. So,
Absolutely right. They need to understand where it's going and who it's going to.
right.
That's it. Well,
But
I don't want to make problems for you where there's no problems. However, I have to assume the commission's still going away from your MLS, right?
yeah, it still has to be pulled out. We've got a way to discuss, or we have to figure out a way to discuss that. Look, we are, and somebody actually said it the other day, is they're going to start getting some sign writers that say buyer agent comp or buyer agent friendly or something of that nature. So that was a part of a discussion Tuesday.
Yeah.
So
there's a website that I just was introduced to, and there's a number of them that started right away, right? We'll post our commissions here, but then DOJ said you can't do that as agents. But there's this one site I found, Listing Split, I think it is. It's seller driven, which is super interesting. Yes, the sellers can go in there 1, 2, 3, 4 Maple offering a 3% instead of the buyer's agents. The lawsuit does not, I'm not a legal expert. Their thought is the sellers are not affected by the lawsuit, agents are. I thought that was very unique. I don't know if that'll catch on, but we're all going to find a way to figure it out one way or another, I'm sure. That's kind of interesting. You like that, don't you?
Well, and what we were talking about is we have a real estate, like the national, not the national, but it's Northeastern Wyoming Realtor Alliance Facebook page. I can see that's going to be used a lot more, where agents are going to say, hey, I just listed such and such property. It is buyer agent friendly. We are comping out this much. Or buyer's agents fees. We can't obviously use our MLS email to do it, but also we can download all of our emails too. Like I'm been introduced into the top 25 of real estate agents for a company that if they get a new listing, because I'm more likely to sell it than anybody else, that I get to know about it first.
Nice.
So in that case, guess what? We're going to probably create a MLS email. Well, not MLS email, but an email to all the agents in the MLS that says, hey, we are listing this property. The seller has agreed to pay an agency fee. So
yeah, they haven't said we can't privately email it around. So it's going to be interesting. One of 1,000. That's a very unique way to do it.
Well, but also I can put it on my Facebook page. What are they going to do to me? It's not part of the MLS. It's not, there's a way around this, and we're going to get around it. I just think that whoever started this, and we sat and talked about it yesterday, this is a way for quite frankly, attorneys, they wanted to make more money. And now that they're making more money on the appeals.
Yeah,
It's
whichever. I agree 1000%. I'm just disgusted and tired of the conversation. Me too. It all comes back to stupid. And with love, we just have to figure out the solution for us and the clients, right, Melissa? That's it. We will figure it out.
I had the conversation with a seller about a month ago of he wants to list his house and he doesn't want to pay a buyer's agency fee, which is fine. I am not going any less than 3.5% for my side of the fees. But like I told him, if you choose not to put out a buyer's agency fee, we need to price it strategically, because when you look at your property, when you bought it, your sellers compensated your buyer's agent. Think about that. What is the likelihood of them getting a buyer at that point in time when they were paying versus you? Well, I'm glad that they paid it for me. So your buyers are going to want the same thing from you that you got. So why not do the same thing? And he's like, that I need to think on that. Okay.
Yeah, that's a really good reminder all our sellers need to hear if they're waffling at all on this. Absolutely.
And I think the hard part is that for us is where I'm falling back to is, okay, so we need to account in the value or take out of the value the amount of buyer's agency fee, the 2.5% that's been paid out. And then if they're taking closing costs into the current value, because if I feel like then we have to inflate it that much more. So we're talking another 6% roughly on top of the purchase price. They're not going to value at that point because our market has slowed down drastically. In the last 6 months, our value has only went up 3% versus overall last year's was 10% year over year.
Wow. Okay. It has slowed down tremendously. That's interesting.
The market itself hasn't slowed down, but the values are not going up as quickly as they were. There's not the bidding wars. There's not the, take it back to interest rates are too high. People are slowing down on buying because they can't afford the interest rate. They can't afford the purchase amount at the same time. So people have slowed down on that. So our values are starting to stabilize.
Okay.
And there's more negotiating power for the buyer.
One more part of the presentation that all the sellers need to hear from you. Right? That needs,
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
that's changing. That's not what you said 6 months ago to the sellers, Melissa.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not even 3 months ago, really.
Yeah.
I'm really starting to see it now because I pulled numbers today. Stuff that was between 170,000, which was rare, to $400,000. It was a bidding war. I'm seeing stuff sit on the market in the 290 range now.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When you say sit on the market from 15 days now to 45 days?
Bear with me here.
Or even
because
more?
I've got it pulled up. I think it's 70 days overall. Let me go into it. Please tell me it didn't flip off there. It did. Give me 1 second. I can pull it up here in a minute.
It's okay. It's okay. I'll.
Well, I want to get it for my VA because I want him to
Okay.
do a
Well,
post
then
on
you
it.
get it. Oh, there's Heather. Awesome. I wanted to ask you guys, I want to really get some answers from your role play style on, you said on a listing presentation, we'll tell the seller, right? You got your agent's commission paid when you bought this house. Shouldn't we pay it forward to the other side? What else are you saying on a listing presentation to a seller regarding all this right now?
Nobody wants to work for free. So if you're not going to pay somebody, I mean, that's what I do. Then why nobody's going to do that? They're going to find another home that they're going to earn a living on. So, I mean, why and do all the work? I mean, it's just pretty simple. So if you want to sell your home, it's good. It costs as a service. I mean, that's what I use.
Okay. All right. I mean, it's straight to the gut. Nobody's going to show your house if you're not going to pay them.
Yeah. I don't care what they say. They're not going to show it.
That's right. That's great.
I
Next
think that is
question.
honestly,
Yeah.
that is, instead of trying to beat around the bush, I mean, that's reality of it. If you are not willing to compensate a buyer's agent, there is a higher likelihood that the buyer will not look at your home. It's that simple.
They will find a
100%.
home. Yeah, they'll find a home that they are being compensated on.
100% versus having to negotiate and get in there and go back and forth. See, the other option guys, is nobody's offering any comp anywhere, right? We can't find this. And what if the listing agent has 32 listings? He's that guy and you don't get an answer. What if it's a brand new agent that has a full-time job and doesn't get back to you? What if, right? There's a
Right.
lot of situations where the communication of this information might be difficult. If there's that, or the DOJ just comes back and say it can't be anywhere, right? We have our Facebook page or our email or whatever we have, that still doesn't get to everybody. We're going to have to negotiate per deal. Each contract, there's a chance we're asking for a commission on every one, whether we know or not, because our buyer can't pay it, doesn't have the money. So we have to, shouldn't we negotiate it, even if they haven't told us they will offer, or maybe we adjust the price accordingly if they weren't going to? Doesn't it still
So
warrant getting into a negotiation? Different way to think about it, I know. I just wanted to throw it out there, see what you thought.
I always fall back to what we've talked about with for sale by owners. If we're doing the research on a for sale by owner and they're not willing to pay compensation, our broker always told us take the amount of compensation that you want, 2.5%, 3%, whatever that is, or 6% for that matter. It just depends on how ballsy you are. Put that on top of the asking or the offer price so they know that it's compensated in there. You know, that's going to change because the marketing it's being marketed out there for this value.
Right.
Whereas like a for sale by owner really isn't, because we're doing the research for that.
Mhm.
So that's where it changes a little bit to where I can't kind of use that card and say, okay, this is what they're asking. We need to up the purchase price
Well,
to cover my
you
fees.
you can. I'll give you a perfect story as to our MLS just shifted. And instead of just saying yes, closing costs, yes,
Mhm.
5,000 on a closed transaction in the MLS. Now
Mhm.
they're specifying what that money was specifically used for. Repairs, non-recurring closing cost, brokerage fees. And we're going to be collecting what that went to, and we're gonna have that data in 90 days and beyond of what the new appraisals, I'm guessing, will look like with comp, without comp, paid by seller. That's gonna be a thing. So we're already starting to break it down and collect it for that very reason. So yeah, I think purchase price will absolutely be dictated, as it is always. Thus why sellers that go FSBO sell for less. That's not new. That's been forever. We have the stats at NAR to prove it. This is going to be the same way.
Do sellers, do FSBOs also have to, do we have to treat them the same as we do if they're just somebody, a member of the MLS?
It depends if they sign a listing contract with us or not, or if we're repping
Okay.
a buyer on that side. And I don't even know if we've talked about a represented buyer and an unrepresented seller yet with all this. I don't know how any of this matters.
It does. I was just curious. I'm doing a FSBO right now.
Okay.
They're the seller and I
Yeah.
have the buyer. And
And
so,
you have the buyer. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Are
So,
you signing a listing contract?
no,
So they're repping themselves, you're repping the buyer.
they were representing themselves, except for the compensation that I had to use, which was here was a form 447, says that it ties me into representing the seller because of the compensation.
Got it. Okay.
And so, and it's been a real pain, you know.
Would you rep them and the buyers now under these circumstances for the same commission you're already getting paid?
Well,
And
that's
just
what's
close the
happening.
transaction?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't do it again.
No,
but
on this transaction.
yeah, I am. So
Okay, you
I'm-
have to. Okay.
Yeah, I ended up, I had to because the compensation is coming from the sell. And so I'm only, you're getting compensation on one side. you know, so be it. But you know, I have to deal with these FISBOs and they're a real pain. But
They are, but not everybody goes FISBO. Again, going back to what we're
yeah,
talking about,
it
Melissa,
doesn't. I was just
I don't think because the opportunities more abound that 50% of our sellers now are not going to offer compensation to the buyer's agent. Maybe, again, we live in the upside down. I'm not sure. I'd love to hear what Heather thinks. Hi, Heather. Oh, she thought she was on listen only mode. Maybe she is. Maybe I'm the one mistaken. Okay.
she was there and then she disappeared.
She's there. She's just on mute. She might be on the other line too.
Okay.
Um,
Can you hear me?
yeah, there you go.
There I go. Okay, sorry. I don't understand. I'm still this many years into Zoom and I still screw it up. It's just me.
Just so
But-
you guys know, Heather and I talk on the phone most of the time.
We do. I am not on board with the videos. And I actually am worried about all of the real estate agents making videos about this commission question online and posting it out there. And I'm like blown away.
I agree with you. I think that is a behind the closed doors kind of conversation, because I think if you say the wrong thing and too many people get a hold of it,
mhm.
then you're opening yourself to a lawsuit or many.
And there's many going on. I mean, even the Department of Justice is being sued right now, and we don't know what's going to happen and what's going to change. I don't know. I'm in California. I don't know where the other two of them are on, but we were just
Washington State and Wyoming.
okay. So they released in California. They've now released, as of yesterday, they've now released our new listing agreements, and I was just trained on them, and it's interesting. They have 100% taken that buyer's broker out. Completely. And the new language that we're being told, and this is where, Don, I didn't get you this morning, but like, and I've been looking on the Facebook site and I'm like, where are the scripts now for what this is? And will it be, for us as buyers agents, and then how to maneuver this. But it's very, it's interesting because they're like, well, you're just going to have to ask for it and everything is going to become negotiable. You're going to have to let your buyer know up front what your fee is, and you just state your fee and blame your broker. Right? Like our fee is 2.5% or 3% or whatever our fee is the buyer's agent. And then just this morning, Don and we were talking and I was like, well, this kind of gives me the power. If they're going to close fast, maybe I can give them a little bit better of a deal versus if they're going to take 5 years to buy a house. But we can always go to a seller and ask them to pay for it. And the new contracts are interesting. They're still in flux, but the conversations I've had so far with all of the sellers, like I think I have 3 listing appointments coming up, and I'm trying to have this conversation with people about it. And they're, so far every single seller that I've spoken to, like Don, I just got off the phone. That's why I was late, because I was with another seller on the phone, and I explained, she's like, that's asinine. That's stupid. When you sign the listing, we're not going to do that. And I'm like, well, I still have to follow the rules. She's like, okay, that's fine. But
Sure.
You need to figure out how to make it clear that I'm willing to pay for it. I was like, well, they're going to have to ask for it. So we have to be trained as buyer's agents to explain to the buyers, hey, this is my fee, but we're going to be asking the seller for it. And that could impact the offer. Like I just got in a contract on one, and absolutely $5,000 of concessions made the deal or didn't make the deal. So
Don, do you still have our state contract that I showed you on how we've been doing it?
I don't have it at my fingertips. No, I might be
So
able.
you guys have never had it in your buyer's broker's agreement that it puts it back on the listing broker or the seller to pay
we did.
for your
We did.
compensation?
Yeah, our
Okay.
buyer broker agreements, they were in there, and they're changing our buyer broker agreements again, but it was in there. It's just we're a state. Some states don't do buyer broker. Like we haven't been doing them. I've been in the business for 20 years, and I think I've written maybe 4 buyer broker agreements until this new.
I've signed my
interesting.
second one, Heather. I wanted you to know. Yay.
Oh, good.
Yes,
Balloons.
yes.
That's
I'm the
interesting
leader.
because we're
Yeah.
required to have them with every transaction we do.
Right.
See, and
And
that's
I've
a
been selling
state
for
thing.
20 years as well.
Yeah, and I think that's what this NAR thing is doing is they are going to make this a federal, like we're nationally, we're going to have to be doing this. So for some of us in states that haven't been doing it, we have to familiarize ourselves with the language. But so far, I mean, there's been, there's always the commercial real estate agent that knows better than any of us and isn't going to offer anything until his property doesn't sell, right? And then they look at the numbers. And so I think it's about educating everybody where we're at and then being honest with them about the costs. I mean, like, fine, if they want to pay me, if you want to pay me by the hour because you think that you've got the deal done and you just want me to do the paperwork, well, my hourly rate is $600. I'm a listing agent and I can't offer anything to the buyer's broker. Well, my listing fee just went up. And if I double end it, because I have to work more, and if I double end it, then I'm going to charge. I'll give you a discount, but it's not going to be what you think.
See,
Right?
and that's the other side of this is I'm doing the same amount of work for your side as a buyer as I am the seller side. So why would I give a discount if I'm handling both sides?
Yeah. No, exactly. I mean, and it's the conversation with those sellers at that we're pre-negotiating up front, and at least here they've told us to explain to sellers, look, buyers agents are going to have a buyer broker agreement. So if they agree to 2.5% buyer rep, but you're willing to offer 3%, or you're willing to offer 3%, well, you are not going to be allowed to do the buyers. They can't take 3. They can only take 2.5, and the seller gets to keep that difference. So that's why, and I'm going to be telling my sellers, I think that we should plan for the worst and then negotiate for the best.
Okay, my phone rang when you were saying that. What is that about the sellers keep the difference? Say that all over again.
Don, I don't know if this is a California thing or a federal thing, but I think this is going to be federal, is that we are no longer going to be allowed to benefit. So if we sign a buyer broker agreement at 2.5%, and then we call a real estate agent and they stupidly say we're offering 3%, you cannot make an offer asking for the 3%. You have to make your offer asking for the 2.5%, and the seller gets to keep that difference.
Yep, you can't
cannot
earn more on a commission from the seller than what is in your buyer broker agreement. Therefore, ask for at least 3 or
so
whatever that top echelons is for you. And then work backwards from there, or be careful otherwise, right? If they offer 3, if they offer 4, you're not going to get it. That's all. I think that's a national rule. Yeah.
No, like, I'm fine with working for, like, with some clients, I'm totally fine with working for 2.5%.
And then we have no problem.
Right. Like, I don't care what the seller's offering. Like, this is what I'm willing to work for as a buyer if you do it quickly.
That's right.
But if you keep me up at 3 a.m. and make me write unreasonable offers and talk to me for 3 years, like, yeah, it's going to cost you more.
Heather, the other idea, just what we were talking about earlier, and I want you two to hear this and tell me what you think with the buyer, right? And explaining the cost. I know all of you well enough, and I can say we're all the same. It's kind of gross that our commission is in the conversation like it is, right? It's not ever been about that. It's about them getting what they want, the clients. So we've got to be professional. We've got to talk about it. We've got to explain it. We've got to make sure they understand it. We've got to get the buyer broker sign saying they do. And we do not need a long diatribe, a rambling diatribe that doesn't get to the point quickly. So let's listen and tell me what you think. For the last umpteen years, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, the buyer's agent has traditionally been paid by the seller's equity, right? Out of the seller's proceeds. And that way you're not paying that out of your pocket. Now, with all the changes, you're responsible for your agents for my professional fee. And this will raise your closing costs. And that's the term I've heard, I've liked, I've cited for myself at least. I raise your closing costs by about 2 to 3%. It's this line item on your estimated closing statement, right? i.e. conversation with lender to get on the estimated statement if we have it. The good news is we'll be negotiating the best we can to, and I have this written out. I'll be happy to send it to you, Melissa. Have the seller cover these costs. I'll of course let you know every step of the way if you would be responsible for the whole thing, part of it, or none at all, depending on what the seller says. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Done and done. Next, let's go buy a house, press hard, third copy is yours. I believe that's going to sum up most of the buyer broker who gets paid and how, at least, conversation. Going on and rambling on about Catchmark and the lawsuit and NAR and bippity boppity bullshit is stupid, I think. There, I said it. I don't think they give a crap at this point. That's our stuff. They need to know with them what's in it for me. That's all they care about, right? I know this is crazy. There's so much to it. Bottom line, Melissa, your closing costs have gone up 2 to 3%. I know it's unfortunate.
end
This
of the-
price range, it means about $17,000. The good news is we write offers, we're going to negotiate. And in most cases, like it always has been, I'm sure we're going to get the seller in some cases, if not most cases, to cover the cost. But you're going to know, I'm going to let you know every step of the way, and we're going to be covered one way or another. And you can decide to go forward, or we just go find another house where the seller is covering that cost. Is that okay?
I think at the end of the day, though, for you guys, it's changed more on the buyer's brokerage side versus me. That part hasn't
Well, we
changed. Where
have
it
to get
changes
one
it for
signed.
me,
Yeah, we have to get one signed.
but where the
Well, never had
conversation's changed for me is more of, what do you charge?
Hmm.
Okay, I've always charged 6% because I've always given 2.5% out to the buyer's agent. And I've always made that very clear, again, with my listing agreement. Now, what this has done is open the door for a seller to say, look, I don't want to pay you 6% anymore. Okay, you're paying me 3.5%, just me. No, I'm not betting on that. Now, if you don't want to help yourself sell, then we don't have to pay a buyer's agency fee. Just know you are risking losing multiple buyers because of it. That's where the conversation's changed for me versus the buyer side.
100%. And that's the conversation. I mean, multiple buyers,
Yeah, but they've
potentially hundreds, if
completely,
not thousands of eyeballs seeing your property, right? Make a
100%.
big deal about it, but yes.
Well,
but they've
they're still going to
completely-
see it.
but they're not. They've completely taken that out. We are no longer, at least in the state of California, our listing agreements, we cannot write that into our listing contract. So you can take a 6% listing, but that's 100% for you as the listing agent, and you're not going to do that. There is nowhere in our listing agreement where the seller has the right to offer any one penny
Wow.
to a buyer's agent. It's completely gone out of our contracts. And they're also removing our cooperating broker compensation agreement form, and they're replacing it with something else. But it's completely out. So sellers will not have in the listing agreements, there will be no place for you to have that conversation about, hey, and this is how much, this is how much I make as a listing agent. This is how much I'll make if I double end it. And then this is how much we're going to offer the buyer's broker. That's gone. The buyer's broker piece is completely 100% gone. That can
That's
only be negotiated by a
crazy.
buyer's broker upon writing an offer and submitting it to a seller.
Yeah, Wyoming left our listing agreements completely alone on that side. We
Did
can
they?
still ask them. Yes. There are only 2 documents, like I was telling Dawn and Brooks just a little bit ago. There's only 2 documents that have changed. They introduced a customer agreement document explaining that this is what a customer relationship means.
Mhm.
And then on our actual offer document, it just puts in there that the seller agrees to pay the buyer's agent's commission of such and such percentage, dollar amount, for part of the contract. They just showed it to us Tuesday, what that's going to look like. But other than that, they left our listing agreements alone.
Oh.
I'm moving to Wyoming, Don.
Yeah, let's go. Now, there's reasons why not, but that's a real big reason why too.
We may be behind the 8 ball on a lot of the states, but I'll tell you what, we kept our noses clean on this one.
You did. Check this out, guys. I logged back into my MLS right now, and the notice is important. Compensation fields being removed on 8/13. Number
Mhm.
5 on the FAQ here, how will I get paid once the compensation fields are removed? Heather, I'd love to know if your MLS is doing the same thing or anybody's. There are different methods for a buyer broker to be compensated. A frequently used method is when the buyer includes a term in the offer stating the seller will pay the buyer broker fee. Assuming the seller agrees, the buyer broker fee becomes part of the complete purchase agreement. Additionally, if using the CAR residential purchase agreement and joint escrow instructions, the payment would also become part of the escrow instructions. We are bypassing everything that we have been told not to do since I've been in the business. Don't write commission into the contract. And now we're writing it into the contract. It has everything to do with the deal now.
That was one of the things that I remember our instructors always told us, never put compensation in the purchase
Completely flipped.
agreements.
We're in the upside down now. We've totally flipped on that. Yes, ma'am. So that's I don't know what y'all will end up doing, but we will, this tells me that's gonna be the majority of how we're doing it, Heather. No website, no nothing. Now, the other side, we can't say we're offering comp. So I think the question when we text or talk to the listing agent or guys, as listing agents, don't be a jerk. Not on this one. Answer the phone, send the text, or Joe, I want you to tell everybody again what you're gonna do in a minute. But you're going to have to ask the listing agent or get the answer straight up. Maybe not what we're offering on paper, but what was the conversation y'all had and what is the seller expecting when it comes to buyer's agent compensation? Right? We're not going to have it any other way. And if we don't have it committed, like Heather said, it's not in our listing agreement. We're not offering it out on the MLS. We only know what, well, the seller and I had a conversation about it. This is what we talked about. And as I'm saying it out loud, I don't know if that breaches anything
Does
from an ethics point of view.
for my training yesterday, my broker just told us we're not even going to be publishing. We're not even going to be publishing on our websites or anywhere anything about it at all. The response is going to be submit an offer with the, I think in our case, it's the SBCC or whatever it is, selling broker compensation, whatever. Submit that with your offer and we will present it to the seller.
Just like they do in commercial real estate. I mean, guys, here's the thing
It's commercial.
that's what I was thinking it would happen. I was thinking it would happen where we have to negotiate on every deal. And Heather, at least we're going to be doing it, right? That makes sense to me.
We have to.
And if that's the norm, that's the norm. Let's go to work. Let's go sell some
And
houses.
then we just tell, like you said, I'm finding I make the explanation to people. Or sometimes they don't even know what's going on. And I'm like, look, here's the quick recap. I make the explanation, and like you said, and then you continue on because they trust us to know how to fill out the paperwork.
That's
So
right.
you want that house, your couch fits in that living room. Well, this is how we're going to do the paperwork. Because of those changes, we now just are trying to shift things onto different line items on the spreadsheet, but I need you to sign these documents this way for now, and then we will do our best for later.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I agree. Now, for everybody else, and Heather's brokerage is taking one way and one stance. I do believe people will be having different conversations, Heather, than that out there. Joe has another idea in Maryland. Joe, tell them what you're going to do with the phone number.
Yeah, so I'm going to create a phone tree so I'm going to replace my cell phone number in the MLS to a phone tree number. And it will be like press 1 for 123 Main Street, press 2 for 456 Second Street, or whatever it is. And it will basically say the seller for 123 Main Street is willing to entertain offers of compensation. Please include in their offer, or the seller of 123 Main Street is offering 2.5% compensation, or whatever it is. There'll be a press 0 to speak to Joe directly, which will ring my cell phone. But I need to put something in between me and all of the agents. And I'm sure it's the same way for you guys, but I get blown up with the dumbest questions every time I put a listing up. And that's before this. So there's no way I'm going to be able to manage all those phone calls coming in. So I'm hoping that puts a barrier between.
Yeah, and the questions you get are already answered somewhere in the MLS or the supplements. That's the killer of those, right? We can't do that
Exactly.
with this one. That's why it's gonna be a kicker.
Can offer concessions though, on MLSs. They are giving us a concessions field. We can't say anything in the private agent remarks, but we can, there is going to be a concessions field for some MLSs.
Yes, we're going to
Sure.
have that. I'm waiting to see if, just because there's talk and I don't know what the last minute changes will be. We all know the DOJ, there's still, who the hell knows could happen. I've heard rattlings that we all might not be able to do that also, Heather. Now, as of right now, CRMLS has it too, and we're set, and that's great. And that along with send us a request and we'll negotiate. I think is how we're gonna do it. But when I see $50,000 there, we've never talked about concession amounts in the MLS, at least where I'm from. Concessions, yes, we don't say the seller will pay
No, we negotiate them.
necessarily $30,000 for a new roof or for your escrow and title fees or anything like that.
Yeah.
So if we have a blank field where we can put dollars or a percentage of sales price, that might eliminate everything we're talking about on this one piece of it with the comp. That might be our saving grace, but I'm waiting for the DOJ to say that's not even gonna be allowed. So we'll
I
see.
think that's not gonna fly, and my broker just
Yeah.
highly told us yesterday that when we do decide to slip up about our conversations with our sellers and how much that the sellers are willing to give to a buyer's broker, that we need to make sure we're only talking to people that we know and not some random phone call from a real estate agent from a different town, because it's probably the DOJ trying to catch us screwing up, us being real estate agents. So we
Because-
can't even say, so, but if I know him, I'm like, so we're gonna have more we're gonna have more back alley deals then. And
Yes.
he's like, probably. I was like, great. So I'm gonna continue to work with the people I know, love, and trust. And I will have to vet people that randomly call me, and it's actually gonna be more work. So my commission's going up.
Well, okay, so let's keep this conversation going. Now we're going, what do you say on your buyer consultation to your buyers? How do you explain this?
I just read I just read it to them. I just read it to them. I'm like, so here's the buyer broker agreement.
Mhm.
Here, let's read it. And then I read it and I say, and this is where I'm going to fill in 2.5%. And this is where I'm going to ask the seller. And then look, okay, now that we have that, let's go over to the offer. And here's in the offer. And then here's the request where we're going to be asking the seller, because there's a check mark in ours that says, according to the SBCC in the offer. And then I just pull it through and I'm like, so see, this is the change where I have to make you understand that there is a fee for me and I'm not free. And that's the problem, is real estate buyer's agents were telling people that they were free and they're not free. Right. So then I have that conversation, and the few people that I've had that conversation with, they're utterly confused, but then they understand it, because then quickly we move over to that form that shows where we're going to ask the seller for it. And I say, I don't know what's going to happen when we can't, when things change and we can't publish it. But the reality is most sellers understand that they benefited from the system that we have. And so we're going to request they continue to benefit from. And then I'm having conversations with the listing agents about the type of sellers they have. Like, is it a commercial broker that's the seller? Is it an estate? Is it somebody, what is it?
That is the information, as always, we can talk about and get from the listing agent. You're right.
Yeah.
So our
conversation, nothing in
conversations,
writing.
our conversations, like I said, because we've always had buyers brokers agreements, have always been the same. I mean, if the seller's not offering compensation, this is what we charge. We'll have to either up the purchase price or we'll have to have you pay it in cash prior to closing. So, but we've always had that coverage. So it's
Good going,
this is
Wyoming.
going to be interesting to see how it really does affect us. I think most of us that have been in the business for any amount of time are probably just gonna business as usual. I hate to say it that way, but I mean, my broker's made it very clear that he's really not even going to give the sellers the option of cutting the compensation rate unless they ask for it. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I just forwarded the paperwork you just forwarded to me, Melissa, to all of you, so you have her, what's that, 2-pager? One and 3/4 pager?
That is literally the new page that they added. And then the little statement that they added to our contracts to buy and sell. That's it.
Joe, that's 2 pages. California's changing 48 contracts and disclosures. Wyoming added 2. Sanity. Okay. Thank you for that.
They just released our Maryland forms and we're just starting to like digest them. So I don't know anything about them yet.
Yeah, no,
What state are you? What state is he?
Maryland.
Maryland. Joe Bird.
Yes, I figured. Brooks is up in Washington and does business in Oregon, Heather. So if you ever need anything up there.
My Oregon people.
Yep.
I
Hey,
don't
now
know
wait a
about
minute. Where's the plug for Wyoming? That's not fair.
And
that. I
Melissa's
just
in
said I was moving to Wyoming.
You're on the
I'm like,
side of
"You're
my
doing it."
screen here. I was going in order, relax. And Melissa's in Wyoming, of course. Funny. All right, anything else, guys, that you want to add to what do you say in the buyer consultation? How else are you saying it? Are you going to explain it? Any other one-liners, any other
The
presentations?
90-day thing. I think the conversation about the 90-day thing, because I think, like I said, I have signed maybe 4 buyer broker agreements in the history, and there was never any time limit to that buyer broker agreement
Right.
except what I wrote in. Whereas now they're going to be maxed out at 90 days, at least here in California. And so you can't work with the, you're going to have to re-up every 90 days with a buyer for that buyer broker agreement, which is, so much fun. But I think that conversation with them, I think it's actually going to help because they sit down and be like, look, this is the contract. And if you're really ready, willing, and able, and you're an A buyer, then we should be able to get this taken care of in 90 days. And then it should be fine. But this is the reality of what's kind of going on. Like, you have to recognize, like, you're sucking up my time. Call me at midnight to write an offer.
Heather, it just hit me. I have the non-go ape shit on him way to say it now. I just
Okay.
said, Heather, and if we don't find anything at 90 days, you and I will sit down and reevaluate. Is this working? Am I working well for you? Are we still going to move forward together? And are we on
Right.
the same page with exactly what you want?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a 90-day review for both of us to make sure
Like
we're
a
on the
quarterly
same page.
review.
Yeah,
So I do that with my coaches. That's what I'll tell them.
that's
I
right.
do quarterly reviews with Tom Ferry, so I want to do quarterly reviews with my
Yeah,
clients.
That's right. That's right. And it's a time for you to evaluate our relationship and my work for you and me and make sure we're on the same page going forward. But you're right. If it's a AAA buyer like you want to be working with, there's no reason to be out there 97 days, right? Looking for a place.
Right.
I like that. That's good. And yeah, guys, I don't know if everybody's does that, but we can't make it a 6-month agreement. So that's good. Joe, anything on your side for the buyer?
Again, I haven't seen. Oh, no, I mean, I think I just explained it to we've had buyer broker agreements required since I've been licensed in 2011.
Yes.
So there's no change for our process there. So it's normally part of my process.
Is it
Don knows
do
this, but
compensation also?
Oh yeah, conversations in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So when I sit down with the buyer consult, I say, we're going to talk about the 3 Ps today. We're going to talk about the property you want to buy. We're going to talk about the process to get you there. At the end of the day, we live in a litigious state. We're going to talk about paperwork. It's required. Where would you like to start, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer? So I give them the sort of idea that they're directing the conversation, but we're going to talk about those 3 Ps either way.
That's
And then I
good.
get a good insight into what kind of personality they are. When we get to the paperwork, it says my fee is this, whatever it is, 2.5% plus whatever flat fee. And then it says the next paragraph down, it says you're responsible for paying this. However, if the seller pays it instead, you don't have to pay. It's basically what our buyer broker agreement says.
Right.
It's very poorly worded and convoluted. So in new buyer consults, this is the same exact paperwork we had before, or I can say very similar paperwork what we had before. This doesn't change. The change is that the seller can't tell us what they're advertised, what they're willing to pay.
Right.
So this increases the likelihood that you will have to pay.
Okay. I still
But
want to
it's no
buy a
different.
house. Let's go. Yes. Right.
Right.
I like some of his lines. He's good. You're good, Joe Bird.
Thanks.
I have it recorded. I'll send this one out for everyone. Joe, I think you may have heard this one recently too. I've heard this recently and I love this. And what a great time when we're talking about the contract, right? The buyer broker, especially for those of us not used to it. And I know you and Melissa have. You know, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, there's 3 contracts that govern a real estate transaction. This is the first one between you and I, the buyer broker agreement. Then there's a contract between the listing agent and the seller. And then here's the purchase agreement that you and the seller will agree upon through the process. Let's start and go through the paperwork together so you're clearly in the know about what to expect through the entire process. I just love the introduction of all 3 of the contracts. When we have to bring up a buyer broker, we don't have to go in deep detail about all 3, but they are the 3 contracts that govern our entire transaction. It was a really cool transition to talking about the contract, in my opinion. I like that.
So bringing all of them to a listing agreement then, I mean, to a listing appointment.
But both
Bringing all to a listing
buyer
appointment and
presentation
agreement.
and a listing presentation. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yes,
Yes,
sir,
ma'am.
you got it. Okay,
Yeah. I mean, why not? That's right. Especially now there's a buyer broker agreement, and guys, it's a big deal for us. Again, between Heather and I and our 40 to 50 years in the business, we've signed 6 of these. That's funny in the state of California. So
Wow.
I appreciate, bye Heather. Appreciate you guys sharing the insights. Now, I think I know, Melissa, you don't sign them before the first showing right now, do you? Or
So am I supposed to? Yes.
Oh, okay,
But
yes,
do
I think.
but do I know? Because I am a firm believer that, you know what, I may not like them as much as they don't like me, which is very rare. But how I hated that idea of tying somebody to me the first time I met them, because it may not be a good fit. And I truly believe that. I know that I have a type A personality. I'm very energetic. And there are people that just don't love that about me. I'm okay with it. Very rare, like I said, does that happen? But I mean, I can make it pretty much all the way to 20 houses before I have to sign one. That's why there's that customer document that they just came up with. So if we're not comfortable with signing a buyer's brokerage agreement right off the bat, hey, this is our customer agreement, just so you know that right now I'm working with you as a customer. But the downside of that document, I don't get paid off for that document.
Yep.
That's why that one right there is to force us into using a buyer's brokerage agreement right away.
Or you're just a door opener.
Exactly. And that's where I have to change my approach to the business. I don't love that idea because, like I said, I still believe that I don't want to be used car salesman that says, hey, let's do this.
Yeah.
I want to build that rapport, that absolute genuine relationship versus having a document saying, hey, guess what, sucker, you're tied to me.
That's right.
We have a 1-day showing agreement that our brokerage came up with as a workaround. So buyer broker agreements were just required to be signed prior to writing an offer up until 2018, and then they were required before showing. And just like you, I'm supposed to do it. I don't really do it, but we created a 1-day showing agreement, which is basically a 1-page. You're hiring me for today. You buy a property I show you today. This is what my fee is. And then it says, before we do anything else, we will enter into the formal agreement, and you have to attach a copy of the formal agreement.
Got it.
I do have the discussion with them about where, like, the real estate brokerage disclosure form is explaining the roles that real estate agents are in before we go into a home. So if I have the listing, that they need to know, look, at this point, I am working for the seller. So anything you use can't be sent, like, used against you in the court of law, kind of a deal. And they're like, okay, we're good there. But primarily, when I am working with the buyers, I do tell them that, look, by state law, which is a true statement coming from our instructors, if I don't have a signed document with you, I'm technically, along with you guys, we're trespassing, even though we've got the buyer or the seller's permission to go on the property. If you're here just to the looky loo, we're trespassing. So I need to know that you're committed to buying something. So if you're willing to sign this document, great. If not, you've been told about it, well, let's keep moving. So they've at least been informed, if that makes sense. So I mean, it's there, but it's not there.
That's interesting. That's one thing. Joe, you have a very interesting rule in your world too that we don't have out here on the West Coast. You and I have talked about a long time ago about the different relationships you do have. Talk about that, because I think that might be coming to a real estate board near you. How all of our relationships are getting divided up now with our clients.
Yeah, so in Maryland, and are you talking about like dual agency type stuff?
Yeah.
So in Maryland, a singular agent cannot act as a dual agent. So I can't wear two hats. I can only represent one party. Now a dual agency in Maryland applies when both agents in the deal work for the same brokerage.
Same here.
So if somebody on my team represents the buyer and I represent the seller, that's okay. There's a form called dual agency, and then there's a form called dual agency within a team in those cases, and that's fine. But I cannot represent both sides at the same time. So you
That's
have
what we go
buyer
to an
broker.
intermediary.
Yeah, watch what
so
they do. They do similar something in Maryland. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have buyer brokerage, we have seller brokerage, and then we have sub agent of the seller, which is if the buyer has not signed a buyer broker agreement, technically I represent the seller. And I think you were just mentioning that I'm a sub agent of the seller if I'm not the contracted listing agent.
Which is how it used to be before buyer brokerage really came out across the country, I believe, back in the day,
Correct.
before my real
Correct.
estate time. So, super
So-
interesting you guys do that.
Ours is very similar because we go buyer's agent, seller's agent, customer relationship, intermediary. And then if it is an agent in our office, then we have what we call designated agency, where we have to sign a form with the buyer or the seller saying, we acknowledge that you work under the same flagship, but we do not crosstalk.
Now you want to go to
Right.
Wyoming, Heather?
Hmm.
That's a lot to know. You've obviously been doing this for a while there, guys. We can dual
Yeah.
agency, we can double end, we just have to disclose that we have nothing that you guys are talking about. I
No,
don't.
they're gonna
know
take it
what-
away from us. They're
I
gonna
know-
take it away from us, Don.
Yeah,
That's
they
what
are.
They
I
are
feel it
taking
coming.
it away from us.
Yeah. Brooke,
They're just fighting
don't
on
tell
over-
Brooks that. Don't tell Brooks they're taking double ending away. He lives off that.
Yep, I do.
Well, they're right now, my understanding is they're fighting on whether to take it away from an entire brokerage, which would be asinine,
Asinine, right?
completely. Like, so now a brokerage that has 100 agents, like no one is
Can't
allowed.
sell their own listings. That is.
Yeah, and that's where my understanding is that's where the attorneys are currently fighting.
Beautiful.
Well, you just have to
That's
double
insane.
your commission rate then.
That's all. Charge more.
Oh, well,
Charge
Oh.
I'm
more.
throwing stuff, sorry.
All right.
that's,
Melissa, get out of here, guys. Any closing thoughts, ideas, ahas? I appreciate this so much.
thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys. I'll
Yeah.
get the recording out. Let me know if you guys need anything. Otherwise, happy selling. I'll see y'all real soon.
All right, bye.
See ya.
Bye.